I think I can use this for my project. Ow, it's hot. Uh-oh, that's the problem with erasable. Ow, I'm cheating. It's okay, I can fix it. Hi, I'm Angelique and welcome to the Finesse Color Challenge. The rules are really simple, so let me tell you what the plan is. I get to pull from our stack of all of our Finesse threads, that's 60 solid colors and 20 variegateds in the line. I get 2 of those and then I have to figure out how to make those 2 work together in a project. And the only thing that I can use is my knowledge of color theory and quilting to come up with this project. And then you get to tell me in the comments whether or not you think that I did it. Sound fun? I think it sounds fun. I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited to do it as well. So won't you join me as I pick out those 2 colors randomly and see what I come up with? All right, so here is our Finesse bucket. Here are all of our colors on these cards. And I'm gonna drop these in here and we're gonna give it a good mix. Okay. I'm gonna reach in and pull my first color. I got Safari. Okay, let's see what I get for number 2. Again, not peeking, just reaching in. Winter Market. I was really surprised to pull 2 variegated threads. So this gives me a lot of color to work with, but I was super excited to get Winter Market. Safari, on the other hand, is one of our new colors, and I haven't really had an opportunity to try this one, so I'm really excited about that too. Plus, I got a combination of greens and blues, which are analogous colors. Hey, can we pop up the color wheel so I can talk about that? Great, thanks. So the color wheel, we have our primary colors, which in the center, that is your red, your blue, and your yellow. And then we have our secondary colors where we're mixing our primary colors together. And then we have some tertiary colors. The colors that are next to each other, those are the ones that are analogous. And so they naturally tend to blend together. So kind of think of nature, right? We see a lot of blues and greens together in nature. Let me put on my Finesse thinking cap and see what I can come up with for these 2 colors. Being that I have so much color, and we do have some of the blending in here, some of the tertiary colors, I'm thinking I'd like to really highlight these with some kind of thread painting. You know, I recently just came back from a cruise and I saw this giant porthole and I thought it'd be fun to climb in here and get a picture of that. So what if I decided to do some kind of picture with quilting and I could use this as my water and sky elements, and then this could be like seaweed. What if, in a way to kind of commemorate this picture, I think I've got it. I'm going to do a mix of thread painting with these colors and applique to make us a mermaid porthole wall hanging. What am I going to use for the porthole? You know, I just threw this away from a previous project, but this kind of looks like a porthole in a frame. I think I can use this for my project. A project like this is a great way to use leftover scraps. So I have dug through my stash and I found some things that I think are going to work. I also found a little bit of leftover batting and backing that I can use. So let's start with the porthole. With the porthole, I'm going to want to bind this, and I'm just going to use some double fold bias binding to go around it. I actually did find one in my stash that I liked a little bit better than this one, and I went ahead and I bound it off camera. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the circle because I need to know how much space I need to fill in with my project. I am just going to measure over the binding that I put on and get what my measurement is. Now I need to do some drawing. I'm not a great artist, so I'm going to cheat and I'm going to use some software to help me draw out my design. So I'm going to start by making a circle, and I did that measurement so I know what size I want it to be. And I know that I want a horizon line because I'm going to have sky and I'm going to have ocean. So I'm going to use one of the tools to draw me a line. And so now I've got that split, and I'm pretty sure that I want my mermaid to be sitting on a rock. Okay, I think I've got what I like. I'm gonna go take all these and print them out, and now I'm gonna have the pieces that I need, so I'll be right back. Ooh, sorry that took me so long. I printed on both sides of the paper, which you don't want to do because once you cut one side, then you can't cut the other side. So we don't need those. I have ones that I have just printed on the one side, and taking all those pieces that I drew and making them individual pieces. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut out our templates, and I have a very special pair of scissors for this. All right, so I need to start preparing my fabric for my different pieces. Let me dig through and find what's gonna work. So first thing I'm gonna wanna do is cut a piece that is large enough for my mermaid tail, and this looks like it's going to be plenty big enough. And then for each piece of fabric, or if you have all your pieces decided, you can do it on one sheet, you're going to need some kind of double fusible webbing. So I'm using Steam 2. It's my favorite. This is pretty simple. I'm just going to make sure that this is going to fit on here. I can cut off the excess. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the one side of the paper off, and I'm going to place my fabric with the wrong side on the sticky side. And I don't want to mess up my ironing board, so I'm just going to trim this little bit of overhang I have. And then with Steam 2 Light, use a dry iron. And I like to iron on the paper side to transfer this adhesive to my fabric. And then I'll flip it over because I really want to make sure that gets transferred on there. And then I can do a little test. Now it's hot. Let it cool down. You don't want to burn yourself. Yeah, so it's over there now. And I'm going to place my template. So I can do this a couple different ways. I could use an erasable marker and trim on this side, but there's paper on the back. So I'm going to just flip my template over so that when I cut it, it's going to be the direction I want it to be per my guidelines. I find it helpful to pin it down, and I'm just going to trace around my template. So now I can take my template off, and I have my cut line. And I'm just going to trim my line. You know what? I am too blind to do this without glasses, so there we go. Now I can see. All right, so that is my mermaid tail. And then I can save these for an applique project later. They're good size, so I'll just throw that in my stash. So I'm gonna finish the rest of the pieces, and then we'll move on to the next step. I cut off her arm. Uh-oh. That's okay, I can fix it. I'll just cut another little piece. Now we need to talk about a background for our applique pieces. So while you weren't looking, I just found a couple larger pieces that I had to make my 2 rectangles, and I want this to, at this time, to be bigger than my porthole because I still have the quilting part to do. So I just want to make sure I have plenty of room for that. So once I have that together and pressed it open, I need a boundary so that I can do my design. I made myself a little template, and I am going to find the center point of my background. So I can just simply fold this in half this way. And I already have a center line from when I sewed the 2 pieces together. So I just need to find the point I'm just gonna press that down with my finger and my handy dandy little marking tool. And with this template, I'm gonna line this up on the edge and I'm gonna draw out a circle. Whoops, I'm gonna draw on the paper. Why stay in the lines? And then I'll just flip it for the other side. All right, so now I have my boundary line so I can start laying out my pieces. But I can't remember exactly how it went. So let me get my overall picture that I drew. I'm gonna start with the rock. And that's because my little mermaid with her broken arm, if I had time, I'd cut another one, but I don't. So we're gonna start by putting our rock down. And so all I have to do is remove the paper from the back, line this up along my boundary edge, and I'm just gonna finger press this down because the glue is what is going to hold it on. Maybe I'll do the tail next. So I'm gonna kind of eyeball where I think this needs to go based on my picture. We need to get her arm on, and since I broke her arm, I'm gonna start with this piece. I'm just gonna lay this here so I can kind of see, oh, I can already see I'm gonna have a bit of a problem here. I probably should have put the bodice on first. So let me take that off. At this point, it is not permanently adhered, so it makes it really easy to readjust stuff. Oh, don't lose that arm. Let's get this tiny little broken arm on first. I can't draw hands at all, so I cheated. That way it's kind of like behind the rock. Like on the other edge of the rock, holding herself up. Now we can get the rest of the arm and bodice on there. Put the tail back on. All right, I'm pretty happy with how I have everything on here. So now I want to permanently adhere my applique to my background. So I'm heading over to the ironing station. So we're going to steam our applique on. Really want to make sure that broken arm stays on there. Technically, I don't even have to sew this down. It's permanently adhered, but I'm still gonna wanna do that. And I'm gonna wanna add that thread painting. So I'm gonna need to go get a frame and a machine that's large enough that I won't have to move this around a lot to get what I wanna get done. Oh, and I did erase my boundary lines, so I'm gonna go redraw that because I think I'm gonna need that in order to do some of the designs I wanna do. So I'm gonna go over here. That's the problem with erasable. All right, magic, my circle's back. So I'm gonna grab my 2 threads that I'm allowed to use. Remember, Winter Market and Safari, and my mermaid, and I'm gonna go get a frame. Ta-da! This is what I decided on. The Little Rebel on the Q-Zone hoop frame. For batting and backing, I just used some stuff I had laying around. Okay, so I am gonna wanna put this in the center, and because of what it is that I want to do here, I don't wanna have to do a lot of moving around. So I think to make this a little bit easier for me and get kind of an idea of as far as I can quilt, I'm gonna move my Little Rebel forward and I'm gonna drop the needle, and that's gonna help me get my piece on here. So I'm just going to pull that up a little bit. And I can add this to my clamps if I want. I'm cheating. I think that's gonna be pretty good, but I need it to stay in place, so I think I'm gonna pin base this. I'm gonna go grab some pins. All right, I've put Safari on because I decided I wanted to start there. And we're going to start with just doing a little bit, need to see. A little bit of stitching around my applique. All right, so when I do applique, I want a really tight stitch, and this is gonna be true when I get to the thread painting as well. And I wanna go slow because I've gotta really get in here and get as close to the edge as I can. So a couple of tips and tricks when you're doing applique with a rough edge applique. Like I said, go slow, use a tight together stitch. Sometimes, you know, it looks better to go over more than once. I'm also using a large needle, the 110/18, because I am going through not just layers, but that glue. And so that's gonna really help me get through that. And because I am using something that has an adhesive, every once in a while it's a good idea to check if your needle's gumming up. Definitely start with a fresh needle and clean it as you need to so that your thread doesn't get caught and break. Now that I've gotten that part around, I think I'm going to start to add some embellishments. And so I've got that part pretty secured on there. Let me just do a little trim, and I think I'm going to start doing some of my thread painting with the Safari. So some tips for that as well. Again, tight stitches. Don't be afraid to start and stop in different places when you're doing the thread painting. And go over areas more than one time until you get the fill in that you want or the look that you want for that. So I'm gonna add some seaweed. Yep, it's getting gummy. Time to clean. So now I think I'm going to start using this to make her flowing hair. I switched to winter market so I can start adding my ocean vibes to this as well as the sky. I really want it to feel like waves, so I think I'm going to do deeper curls with these ones. Another tip I would give you, I would match my threads to my applique pieces. It's going to just make it look a little more seamless. Also, don't be afraid to overlay so you can create some of that dimensionality when you're doing your thread painting. Another trick or tip is sometimes using a different color is going to create some shadowing. So I'm going to use this one around her neck so it looks like, you know, when you're three-dimensional, you've got that shadow from your chin. And I think I might add an eyeball. All right, I'm pretty pleased with that. So I'm going to take this off the frame and we're going to finish up our wall hanging. All right, so I have my piece designed. I want to cut it so that it is the same size as my frame. So I'm just going to layer that on there to get a good visual. Here we go. That one needs a new blade. I'm going to just clip my layers together. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew in the ditch here so that I can close up that porthole, and then I'm going to sew a 1/8 inch around here so that I can keep my layers together, and then I'm going to do some regular binding. So I'm going to go do that. And bam, it's done. And you can add loops like I did here. I'll show you on our social media pages how to make some quick loops out of your regular binding. Check us out on Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest, all those fun things, and we can hang it. It's all done. So tell me, what do you think? Did I successfully complete the challenge? Let me know in the comments. What do you like? What do you don't like? What do you like to see more of? And if you really enjoyed this segment, please be sure to like and subscribe. Until next time.